I currently work at LinkedIn as part of their business leadership program, which is a rotational. So you go through different parts of the company, from talent to customer operations to sales, and then you get to pick one to determine your own career. I joined that in October. After I graduated, I was back in Dubai for a little bit, where I helped start a nonprofit that works with laborers. Well, I think the biggest thing it's done for me is made me more of a self-aware person, and I think that's super important in the workplace because you'll find that it's certainly not as structured as school can be. So having a core self of identity has certainly been helpful. I think my advice would be to not be afraid to put yourself out there. I think going to CMC, you can feel pressured to go down a certain route and not necessarily feel like you have the skills to do it, but I think there's a lot of value in what we study, whether it's history or English. And I think the biggest thing that we have, going for us is our communication skills. So make sure you're able to, communicate how your major has helped you, why you're qualified for the job, and I think you'd be surprised at the amount of opportunities that will come your way. You're gonna be fine. I think that's something like every decision feels like it's the most important decision, and I guarantee you that you will probably find a job, and the world is not gonna come crashing around you. Thank you.
My current job, I work as an assistant editor at Random House. I've worked there for about a year and a half. I started as an editorial assistant, which basically means that I work very closely with one editor, and I will read submitted manuscripts alongside him and give him my opinion on them and whether I think the book should be bought. Sometimes I work with him when the actual manuscript is being edited. Once the manuscript is done, I basically function as a point person between all the different departments, so production, art, legal, permissions, all the different people who help the finished manuscript become the book that you can buy in a store. And now, as an assistant editor, the sort of trajectory is to go out and to try and meet agents, literary agents, and buy projects on my own. You're kind of expected to be a lit major if you want to be an editorial, but you can also do history, anything that sort of involves like reading, critical thinking, writing. It's kind of open-ended. People end up in publishing through lots and lots of different routes, but most editorial assistants have a lit degree. As a dual major, I never had to take a theory class, so I kind of just hurled myself at the material and had really harebrained ideas and felt incredibly encouraged to follow those harebrained ideas, which my thesis is very definitive proof of. And basically that's kind of what any editor does. Publishing is such a gut-based business. Nobody knows why a book flops and another one succeeds, so really all you can do is figure out what you like, exactly why you like it, and be ballsy enough to follow that hunch and take a bet with somebody else's money and turn it into a book. Okay, if you're torn between applying for the safe job that you can definitely get and the dream job that is a total definitely not certain, go for the dream job. I was going to take a job at an energy consulting firm, which is really interesting work. It wasn't my dream job, and the fact that I went for my dream job and got it, I think is definitely a good sign that you should too.
After graduation, I spent a little over a year working consulting, as many CMC graduates do, and has since spent the last year and a half or so working for a tech startup in New York City that does data and analytics for editors and journalists at digital media and publishing companies. Since graduating CMC in working in the professional world, I've definitely realized that a lot of the skills I cultivated as a history major and studying more broadly the liberal arts and humanities at CMC have really set me apart from a lot of other people that I've worked with, especially people who have worked in business majors or more technical majors. And I think the number one skill that I developed as a history major has set me apart has been my writing skills. I've always felt that clear thinking is reflecting clear writing, and in any type of client facing role that you'll have in which you're directly communicating with high profile clients or more senior members of your own organization, having clear, concise, and compelling writing in your communications is really going to set you apart and make you a much more trustworthy person to be able to do high profile work in your job. As students who are currently studying history and other humanities and liberal arts majors, I definitely recommend that you guys focus on the more foundational skills that are going to be really important in your careers, as opposed to more job-specific skills that you'd be able to learn on the job. So skills like writing, like critical thinking skills and analytical skills that you'd be able to develop in history major, literature major, philosophy major at a school like CMC, I think will really set you apart and make you a really valuable contributor in your professional world, and will give you a lot of options that you may not have if you had a much more narrowly tailored major that didn't reflect exactly what you'd want to do maybe 5 or 10 years from now. I've really found that majoring in history has opened up a lot of opportunities for me and has really made me a really strong contributor in the roles I've been able to have so far in my postgraduate career.
I work out in Washington, D.C. as a speechwriter for my home state Senator Martin Heinrich from New Mexico. As you can imagine, it's pretty crazy out here in D.C. living in Trump's America. So I definitely value my history perspective. It's been helpful to kind of think back about all the crazy times that have been, but also to just have a sense of where a lot of these frames have come from. I did my thesis back at CMC on Native American tribes as they were trying to fight efforts to terminate tribal sovereignty back in the 50s through the 70s, and how they used media and newspapers to advocate for themselves. And I think particularly at this time it's actually been pretty useful to see how the resistance to Trump and the new administration is taking now more social media forms. But as someone who's working for a Democratic senator, just having that sort of perspective on how to kind of stand up for our ideas has been a valuable thing to think back on. I really value my history degree and my government degree, but I did most of my work by the end of CMC more in the history realm, and I think it's really useful. I do a lot of writing speeches and op-eds, and a lot of that is possible because I am constantly developing an appreciation of the history of my home state and the country, and really trying to use that to provide context and frames for messaging. I think biggest thing you can focus on now is finding what you love, but also really trying to hone your writing and taking a lot of the criticism from professors and peers, and just try and grow a lot in that way. So good luck with everything, and hope it's a little less hectic out in Claremont than it is here in DC.
I'm currently working at a startup called MealPal in New York City. I work at the Vera Institute of Justice at the Center on Victimization and Safety, also in New York City. My CMC history major has helped me because it made me a strong writer, so my supervisors trust me to write memos and briefings for them.
My CMC history degree has helped me because it's made me a much more critical thinker, and I have a different way of thinking about problems and thinking about different things than the people on my team. So my supervisor has really grown to appreciate the way that I think about certain situations.
Some advice that we would give to current history students is that you don't have to have a job right when you graduate. Neither of us did, and we both are so happy with our jobs right now. And it's a lot of pressure when you're graduating, but you could spend the year focusing on being with your friends in California, or writing a great thesis, or any activities you're involved with on campus. But you don't need to feel pressure to find a job until the very day of graduation.
Yeah, when you graduate, go traveling. We went to Asia for a while and it was great. I went to Europe, I stayed at home for a while, and things just kind of came together. So
It'll happen.
Yeah.
You have the rest of your life to work.
2015 with a dual degree in history and government. I did ROTC in college, so I've been on active duty as a U.S. Army armor officer since graduation. I started in Fort Benning, Georgia. I spent about 10 months there in training, learning about tanks and all sorts of stuff. And then ever since March of last year, I've been stationed here at Fort Bliss in El Paso, Texas. I'm currently a scout platoon leader, responsible for 36 soldiers and 6 Bradley fighting vehicles, part of 1st Squadron, 1st Cavalry Regiment, 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 1st Armored Division, getting ready to go to California to the National Training Center in Southern California as part of a potential pre-deployment certification in a couple months here. Thinking about future plans, I've got a couple routes I'm thinking of in the Army, potentially staying in my career field and going to be a troop commander somewhere in 2019, 2020, or potentially trying to go the special operations route within the Army. I'd have to go to a selection course for that. And then also considering going to law school, getting out and being a civilian and working in the public policy field as a normal civilian. I've been thinking a lot about what my history major did for me in college and being a history major. I'd say I expected that writing would be crucial, and that's proved true. What you learn as a writer, as a CMC history major or a literature major, it's proved invaluable for me in my job, writing evaluations for subordinates so they can get promoted, writing training plans so my platoon can do all kinds of training to make us more lethal and better at our jobs. Secondly, I don't think I expected this as much, but the ability you learn to develop an argument as a history major at CMC that you can follow through with evidence and over a long period of time. I'm not sure you get that as an econ major or a math and science major at CMC, and I definitely got that as a history major, and that's proved crucial because the Army is more of a political organization than I may have anticipated, and sometimes you have to be able to argue your case for why you want to do something, either in a tactical environment or in garrison here, for why we want to do something. So if I want to do a specific training event, I have to be able to articulate why we need to do that. And I'm honestly not sure that I would be able to do that as well as I think I'm learning to be able to without having been a history major at CMC, especially the history senior thesis, because that's learning to develop an argument over a long period of time. And then again, this is sort of connected to that, but patience. In my specific field in the Army, you have to be very patient because as a reconnaissance officer, you're going out into an unknown environment and taking little pieces of information and piecing them together into an image, sometimes in a hostile environment where you're reporting up to your higher command as to what you're seeing and what the enemy is doing so that the rest of the force behind you has a better sense of what's going on and they can go with a specific course of action. And just like being a history major, sometimes you'll see facts, especially again with senior thesis, that are little niblets that don't seem entirely related, and you have to piece them together into an argument that others can understand. And I sort of view that as my job as a reconnaissance platoon leader or scout platoon leader here at Fort Bliss. Really, thinking back on my experience as a history major at CMC, I'd say take advantage of the deep rigor in certain problems you have to solve. So today I work in a high-paced, fast-paced environment, but none of the problems I'm solving are that intellectually challenging. There are just a lot of them, and it can be overwhelming. But I think at CMC, as a history major especially, you get the chance to take time and sit down and tackle real tough questions, and I miss that because none of the issues you deal with after college are quite as serious as those, honestly, that you're considering in college. For example, my friends and I started an officer book club because we missed that rigor of thought that you get as a history major especially. But I congratulate you all on choosing an excellent major at CMC with great professors, and I think it'll serve you well, just as it's helped me out a lot.